Greetings, everyone. I'm Nikant, and I extend a warm welcome to all of you at The Art of Product Navigation, a panel discussion. And in this session, our esteemed panelists will dive the world of bridging generational gaps and sharing their knowledge. So today, we are thrilled to present an engaging panel discussion, which is centered around the theme, Navigating Your Unique Company's Odyssey. And I'm delighted to introduce KiwiTech. It's my pleasure to introduce KiwiTech, an exceptional innovation ecosystem housing over 500 portfolio startups and supported by a network of 300 plus mentors, all dedicated to empowering global innovators. KiwiTech's journey began in 2009 when a group of seasoned entrepreneurs who had previously built and scaled a publishing services company to a 9-digit exit, embarked on a new mission to empower startups through innovation. So at KiwiTech, we collaborate closely with early to late stage startups, providing comprehensive support in technology, fundraising, mentorship, networking opportunities, and go-to-market strategies. So without further delay, I would like to invite our panel moderator today, Mr. Jerry Balan, who's an EVP of Strategic Partnerships at KiwiTech, and he's going to be kickstarting our panel discussions. So how are you today, Jerry?
Okay, thank you so much, Akant. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Let me just start by saying that today we're just going to have some fun and hopefully learn a thing or two. Through your own personal business journey, you may have already encountered some of the points that our two great panelists will discuss, or I should say argue about today. That's okay, because it's always valuable to confirm or negate or modify previously conceived notions as you continue the startup journey to success. So let me first give a brief introduction to our panelists. First and foremost, Jay Whitehead is a serial entrepreneur who has led 18 startups, managed 6 successful exits in IT, HR services, media, and social enterprise, and raised over $500 million in venture capital, EB5 capital, and private equity. His first tech boss was Steve Jobs, with whom he helped launch Apple's Lisa computer in 1983. He co-founded the fintech app developer League Network, which is a public benefit corporation, which was acquired by the current company that he runs. He holds a BA from UCLA and a strategic finance certificate from Harvard Business School. He is a dual citizen of the US and France, married with 3 children, and has completed nearly 100 marathons. Jay, I didn't know that. 100 marathons, that's pretty impressive. And then on the other side of the team is Adam Franchella, is a multidimensional technology professional specializing in product management, UX design, and business analysis. He is passionate about partnering with enterprise and entrepreneurs to bring their software products from concept to launch. And Adam and Jay, you might like to just say another word or two about yourselves before we start our session today.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jerry.
Adam, as Adam pointed out earlier, before this webinar, our generational gap is probably best illustrated by our attire. Adam's wearing the classic millennial startup garb, and theoretically he's also wearing pants, so that's good. And I
fingers crossed on that one.
And of course, I default to a shirt and a tie. So generational.
Well,
yeah, that sounds about right.
I was going to say, I mean, the goal of our session is to get young folks and older, but not so old, okay, to learn from each other. So maybe part of it is attire. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, it is. But there is quite a lot of value. I mean, my last name's Whitehead, so but I've always had white hair. So it's but as you age, sometimes the white hair helps, and sometimes the white hair hurts.
Well, we'll see. We're gonna explore that today. So we're gonna test that hypothesis. Well, Jerry, I can start and just kind of give a little bit more background of my my history, and I think that the thing that Jay and I really have in common, obviously as well, is our connection to KiwiTech. Jay and I have both been very uniquely connected to KiwiTech for a long time. Years ago, back in 2017, I ran as CEO of a portfolio company of KiwiTech's called CloudSurf, and I'm sure we'll end up getting into that during the panel discussion. After I exited that company, I ended up actually working for KiwiTech as their first ever US-based product manager and advisor, partnering with many of their core startups and enterprises to help them build their software and to help advise product strategy. And to this day and age, I'm no longer a full-time employee of KiwiTech's, but I continue to be a product advisor and mentor to a number of KiwiTech startups and enterprises. So a lot of connection to KiwiTech, and really love what KiwiTech is able to bring to startups. I'm a testament of that in my own right, and what they've helped me to accomplish with my startup CloudSurf, and where I am in my career right now as a product leader. Fast forwarding a little bit to where I am now, though, I am now the Chief Product Officer of HandsDown. HandsDown is a venture-backed company that's based in New York City, and at its core, HandsDown is an e-commerce platform that is built specifically for mothers. So if you think about if you're a mom yourself in the audience, or if you have someone close to you who has become a mom recently, the e-commerce journeys of new mothers are very unique from really any other demographic of people. They have very unique problems and challenges, mainly time and trust. They have very little time to make purchases that they're making, yet they require more trust in the purchases that they're making, because they're buying things for their little ones. So how almost all moms solve this is through direct recommendations of their mom friends. So moms in their lives that have come before them and have made some of these purchases, have made some of these errors, and can help them by recommending products. What HandsDown has built is a community-based e-commerce platform where moms can share their product recommendations with other moms. And then if another mom purchases something from that veteran mom's list of recommendations, that mom will earn shopping credit to continue to use and spend in their journey as a mother, and buying things on a continual basis. HandsDown graduated from the Techstars Accelerator program earlier this year in April of 2023. We released our application around that same time, and continuing to work towards product market fit. Right, that's what startups do. Product market fit is not 0 or 1. I would say it is a scale, right, of where you're always trying to achieve stronger product market fit. So we're somewhere in the middle there, and continuing to achieve it. And so that's mainly what I do, but I also am a consultant, and we'll talk a little bit about building teams, but part of what I do for other teams still is operate as a fractional chief product officer, and advisor to a number of other early stage startups, including a couple KiwiTech portfolio companies. So a little long-winded, but that is a little bit more detailed intro of my connection to KiwiTech and what I'm currently doing and what I've done in the past.
Jay, one of my best days at KiwiTech was the day that you and I had a very long conversation where we connected on our publishing, our knowledge of the publishing industry, our background. And so again, Jay, it was, we've had a long relationship, and it's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's appropriate that today's the day we're doing this webinar, Jerry, in terms of publishing. Today's the day that Rupert Murdoch retired at 92 years old. So,
not a sad story. So with that, we have decided on about 4 topics. We've got a limited amount of time, but it's always fun to hear perspectives, and obviously, with the experiences that you guys have had. So let me start by saying, okay, out there, you're starting brand new. So tell us, what is the best startup value proposition? What do you have to have, and what do you have to know? Jay, maybe that's a good place to start. Somebody fresh on the startup pad.
One of the guys I've met along the way is a guy named Mark Cuban. Now he owns the Dallas Mavericks. He's a venture capitalist. He's a guest on or a host on Shark Tank. Many people know him and know Mark Cuban. He's invested in hundreds and hundreds of startups. And he has a saying about product. If your first product doesn't suck, you launch too late. And a lot of that is true. I mean, for those of you who read books, and some of Adam's generation reads books, I know, but for those of you who haven't picked up the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson, this is an important read. It's 650 pages, but it's worth it. In the middle of the book, there's a story about Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, of course, who launched Tesla and took delivery of his first car, the Tesla Model S. And it sucked. It sucked. It didn't have any range. The dashboard sucked. The steering didn't work. It was just terrible. It was a terrible thing. And that's a great example, but a great example of, he launched fast, he did everything really, really fast, and the first product sucked. But here's the secret, and Adam, this is the segue to you. The secret to product success as an entrepreneur is one word: pivot. You have to be able to pivot quickly. Pivoting quickly is a matter of both risk tolerance and experience. If there's any one skill on the product side that I would point back to over 35 years of doing this, it's the ability to pivot. Now, sometimes you pivot into a box canyon and, guarantee the fast road to hell. I've bankrupted my share of companies, but most of the time, the only way for you to successfully make your product viable and get that product market fit that Adam talked about is to pivot and change your model. Adam, you have a story about pivoting your company from general to specific, from trying to please everybody to knowing that you can only please a niche.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. So my startup, HandsDown, learned some of that the hard way, as Jay is mentioning. And so essentially, as our story goes, HandsDown was initially an e-commerce platform that was targeted towards fixing the lack of trust problem that exists in e-commerce for everyone, right? There's bot reviews out there. There's Instagram influencers who are peddling products that they clearly don't use. There's a lot of reasons not to trust your e-commerce journey. So in order to solve that, the original hypothesis of HandsDown was to do that through trusted recommendations from people that your friends and family and people in your network. We launched the initial version of the application for everyone, if you will, right? We weren't targeting a specific demographic. We weren't targeting a specific vertical or cohort of users. And we were doing that when we went to Techstars. When we went to Techstars, a number of our mentors and advisors of that program said to us, you know what, right now you guys are for everyone, and pretty soon you're going to be for no one, because it is very difficult to boil the ocean, if you will, and solve everyone's problems. And different demographics of people, different verticals, have very different problems as it relates even to a core problem of the lack of trust. So during that time in Techstars, we stopped building our product. And we stepped back and we said, let's do some consumer discovery and research, and let's figure out a vertical, a cohort of users who are experiencing the problems that our application is solving most acutely. People that are experiencing the problem so strongly that they can't help but have to solve it, right? It's mandatory for them, and they're solving it right now, maybe with inefficient, cost inefficient solutions. Maybe it's disparate solutions. Find that cohort of users. And during that consumer discovery process, some of the people we talked to happen to be moms, but as we talk to more and more people, we realized that moms were that demographic of people for us. They were the people that needed HandsDown solutions more than anyone else. So the moment we realized that, we started doing everything to build for them. We changed our branding, we changed our messaging, we talked to them and understood their critical problems and started building solutions directed at those problems rather than building a solution we thought would be good for everyone, but maybe wasn't great for anyone. So I think, Jay, that's what you're referencing was the willingness for us to pivot our startup, even after we'd already raised money, gotten into a strong accelerator program. We decided, you know what, we're willing to make this pivot. And ever since then, we have really skyrocketed our trajectory towards product market fit. You know, we're still not there. We're still working towards it. It's always a work in progress, but the pivot has been a huge part of working towards that.
So
Yeah,
here's
I've got my own version of the pivot here in this company that we've started. I'm the CEO of reentrycenters.com with 3 constituencies: judges and DAs who control people who are in jail or prison, the people who are in prison and getting out, the reentrants, and second chance employers. So it's a three-party marketplace. Second chance employers who give these guys jobs. Before I started, I did not found this company. I became in as CEO when the company acquired my company. The first proposition was that the participants, the people getting out of prison, are the customers. They're not. So we had the people who ultimately employ them and give them paychecks so that they can pay their $307.25 a week to support themselves while they're in this program are the employers. So we pivoted to be an employer-focused company rather than a participant-focused company or a justice-focused company, and that's made all the difference. Growth has come, profitability is near, and funding is pouring in. So that's a pivot that worked for us. If we had kept on the old road to perdition.
And I want to just touch upon real quick, Jerry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to touch upon, I think, part of the reason, Jay, that the original founders of your company, as well as the founder and myself of my company, fall down that rabbit hole oftentimes. And I think it's because there's this concept in product building of focusing on the problem space or the solution space, right? And the solution space is where a lot of entrepreneurs want to start. They have this idea. They've talked to a couple of people who have said, you know, that's a good idea. You should continue doing that idea. And they say, okay, like, what is that idea going to look like? And let's ideate and let's do some concept and whiteboarding and let's actually go build that idea. And they're focused in the solution space. Whereas if they step back to start and actually focused on the problem space, talk to their prospective customers and understood what their problems are, what their strongest problems are, they may have realized before starting to build the solution that, you know what, the solution needs to be tailored in a little bit of different way to focus on these features and functionality to make sure that we're solving the problems that these people are having. Or they might have realized, you know what, our customer's different than we thought it was, right? Like in your situation, or in my situation, ultimately when we decided to verticalize. So to me, I think that's actually at its core, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen entrepreneurs go down is starting in the solution space and focusing there all the way until you're forced to pivot and you're forced to look at the problem space. It's way cheaper to start in the problem space. Start in the problem space, talk to people, do consumer discovery, talk to as many people that you're going to sell this thing to as possible. And I promise you're going to learn something that's going to end up giving you a lot of information for where you should go in the solution space.
Agreed.
It sounds like you both agree on this one, which is kind of good. I thought maybe, but what you're really agreeing is that you're defining who the real customer is. If I kind of boil what you both said, you really are defining who the customer is, and that's really important. And once you've identified who the customer is, now you can target what makes sense for them. Am I right? Does that make sense? Because
that's right.
Customer is not the person who is reentrant. And in your case, we're talking about what seemed to be obvious, and obviously you were able to navigate, and that's why you became CEO of a company that had already been started, because they couldn't figure it out. You could.
Yeah, they didn't follow the money. Following the money is always it's maybe another way of saying what Adam did, the product versus a solution. So you got to follow the money. You got to know where your real customer is, who actually is generating that revenue stream for you. And so obviously the money comes in our business model and reentrycenters.com's business model from the employers. And so we really needed to please them.
But it's a perfect segue to really what happens next after you have defined, the problem, and you've defined, perhaps come up with now what the solution is and who we are targeting. The next step is capital, right? So now after you realize all of this, I need the money. What's the game plan here, Adam? What do you do?
Yeah,
Now,
I'll start.
how you want to spend it, but how do you get it?
So I would say the first things first, the way that I have approached starting businesses, and I think many in my generation, my demographic, is first and foremost, what is the best way in the longest way that I can build this business without raising money? Right, raising money, it takes you away from some of the core things that you need to be doing to build a strong business. So, is there a way for me to go a long way toward working toward the product market fit without raising venture capital? So I think that's the first thing is evaluating your business in terms of how is it possible to go a long way without raising money. But ultimately, Jerry, to your point, the startups that we're talking about building, venture backable startups, require money to scale and require money to truly build what you're hoping to. So I guess in my experience, we're raising money actively with HandsDown right now in a seed round. We already raised a pre-seed round of venture-backed money, and we're now raising our seed round. And the climate right now is very different than it was even 2 years ago, when venture money was coming in extremely fast to different startups just for concepts and not for something that they've proven yet. And I think what I've noticed recently is that the goalposts are really moving, right? When we're talking to venture capitalists, what they used to say are what we need to attain to achieve, getting a check from them is radically different than it was 2 years ago. Right now, it is trending towards revenue, right? They want to see either a very efficient path to revenue, or they want to see revenue already. So I think that is very different, and it's caused us to change our focus in HandsDown on the early stage, rather than focused on community building early, and then getting to revenue later. We are focused on building towards revenue right now, so that we can continue to achieve our fundraising objectives. So that's the first thing that I've seen. The second piece of advice I have is that when trying to get in front of venture capitalists or investors in general, what I've found to be the most successful to do that is to ask for not a meeting to pitch them, not a pitch meeting, but to ask them for advice, to approach venture capitalists and investors saying, I'd love to pick your brain on such and such about this. I see this isn't in your background, and I would love to, I'm in the process of building this. Can I pick your brain on this? Things from that than really from anything else. And ultimately it leads towards, a due diligence process, hopefully. But that's been the way that we've been able to get in front of a lot of folks. So I've plenty to talk about on this, but those are just two things that came to mind when we were thinking about our fundraising process for HandsDown.
Yeah, Jay, I guess you could say flattery will always get you somewhere, right? But I think also in your case, Jay, it's, you've had success, and I think it also has a lot to do with who you know. How important is that? Your network, all of the issues that Adam talks about, and what our current situation is. There's still maybe that old school. Who do I know? Who can I sit down with? And any thoughts on that,
Right.
Jay?
Right. Yeah, networks are important. Silicon Valley is the ultimate network. I grew up in Silicon Valley and built the first venture capital-backed technology magazine, which was called Upside Magazine, which morphed into Red Herring, which now is dispersed among several big networks. Crunchbase was a spinoff from that, and so as is his pitch book. So there are these networks now that you can dig into. So networks are important, but more than that, more than networks, which is kind of an obvious sort of a cliche answer, the most important commodity known to man, especially in the context of raising money. And one of my investors, my favorite investor, James Lincoln, who runs Illuminated Funds, one of the largest family offices in Phoenix, taught me this. The most valuable commodity known to man is trust transfer, is transferal of trust from one person to another or one person to many people. And so you have to be able to link into that trust transfer in order for somebody to trust you with $5, let alone $5 million. So, and there are three components to trust transfer. People say trust transfer, what does that mean? Where you're transferring trust from one person to another. It breaks down into three components when you're raising money. The first is you've got to show competency, that you can competently handle money. Now, Adam worked at Morgan Stanley. I did time at the Harvard Business School. I've run finance for a lot of companies. So you've got to show competency. For example, if you don't know cap table math, capitalization table math, and how dilution works, investors are going to look at you like you are an alien space monster. So you have to master certain tricks that show that you are competent to handle investor money. So that's number one, competency. Second is a track record. Now, some early stage guys, especially Adam's generation, don't have a big track record. I happen to have a big track record, so I play on it a lot. And that's important. But if you don't have a track record, competency can actually make up for, homework can actually make up for your lack of track record. And the third and probably the most critical part of raising and closing funding is FOMO, fear of missing out. You have to make your investment, no matter whether it's debt, equity, angel money, venture capital, private equity, corporate debt, corporate equity, any of it. You have to add a competitive element. If you don't have two investors vying for that investment slot, you might as well have none. And if you only have one, you better manufacture a second one, even if it's in your head. Fear of missing out, creating competition. We're creating the illusion of competition is the only way that people feel motivated enough to actually write a check. It's without that deadline or without that fear of competition or without fear of being beat out, nobody's going to write you a check. So you have to create it. So those 3 points are competency, track record, and fear of missing out. Those three pieces are elements of what trust transfer really means in the scope of raising money. Now, I've got one footnote there. I've had my share of failures, just as many experienced entrepreneurs have had. When you fail, and you will fail well, what does that mean? That means that if you take it down, if your ship sinks, be forthright, honest, trustworthy with all your investors. They will forgive you. If you are deceptive, unavailable, hide, run, defect to Canada, that's not the way to fail. In America, it's okay to fail. In fact, failure fast is actually a badge of honor. So when you fail well and be trustworthy, because trust transfer is the most valuable commodity known to man.
Wow, what a great takeaway. I think everybody who's participated today, those are some really, really wonderful takeaways. And, Adam, to your point, I do know that getting to revenue sooner and perhaps putting a capital raise a little bit behind, it may be just a manifestation of the conditions today. And if you don't have the kind of background, the network that Jay has built. So part of that is also, building an MVP and creating something viable and maybe really understanding more of what you're extremely good at in order to be able to do that. And I think that's also part of some of the takeaways that I think you had mentioned to me when we talked about this. So I just wanted to, mention that to our audience, as I know that you felt very passionate about that. It's also important that people, whether, obviously nobody wants to fail. That's not where you start, but you start with the idea that you know what you're doing, you understand your marketplace, and if you can get to revenue, that's great. And certainly in the number of the people that I've had the privilege of speaking to, they have been able to get to revenue, and they are building with either bootstrap revenue, and then they make themselves more presentable when they sit down with those investors. But I think having more than one is a very important point, Jay. Thank you for making that.
Yeah. The last thing I'll add, Jared, just real quick, is in the absence of some of the things that Jay mentioned, right? Especially in terms of like track record, right? People in my generation, it's tough can't manufacture a track record, right? Unfortunately, that's not something that's possible. But to Jay's point, it is extremely valuable. I think in the absence of some of those things, what I've seen be the most effective is storytelling. If you can tell a good story to investors, even if it's pie in the sky, even if it's very forward looking, if you can craft a story that can be told to investors, and part of that is also within that story building some FOMO and building some exclusivity as a part of that story, I think is extremely valuable. So I think that's how, with a little bit less of a track record, and that's an understatement, than Jay, that's been some of what I've focused on is crafting a very meticulous story that I hone in every time we do our pitch. Each time it gets a little stronger based on what I feel like is successful during that story tale. But I think that was the last thing I wanted to add for fundraising is your story is a huge part of it as well.
Yeah, that's actually, a generational gap right there. Adam would say that competency is storytelling. I would say that competency is a series of bullet points showing you can do certain things and certain things. Storytelling is a perfectly acceptable millennial replacement for competency. Perfectly acceptable. So
in the absence, you have to do what you can do, Jay. So
that's right.
Well,
that's right.
It sounded like, Jay, what you were saying is that story should not be fiction. It better be fact. So otherwise,
what's fact? What's fiction? It's alternative facts are a thing these days, I guess.
Sure, but investors know that every passionate entrepreneur is going to embellish reality a little bit. We know that, right? And there's always going to be, and I think they expect that. When you say, guys, that if you're not passionate, if you're not enthusiastic, if you don't believe that yours is the next unicorn, it's very, very hard to convince people to really pay attention. It seems that
and
way.
I think bending the truth is, obviously not something that I would condone, but I think storytelling is something different, right? Storytelling about the world that could be if all these things break the product, this company, and what, the world that we could live in with this new product and the business that we could create, by definition isn't fictional, but it is aspirational. So I think that's what I've tried to focus on.
So now, we've defined a lot of things, and we talk about, so much of what startups need, regardless of the product, is technology. Whether the technology is just a supporting entity or the technology is it in SaaS models and things of that nature. So how do you get started? What do you see about technology? How to get it started? People are concerned about who owns the ecosystem, and obviously you get a lot of good information from accelerators, but they are not necessarily advising on technology. They're more advising, from my experience, on business. So Jay, what are your thoughts there as far as what you've seen on the tech front? And obviously you've had a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, so technology is a direct result of correct definition of your product and your ideal customer. Let me give you an example in the context of reentry centers. So reentrycenters.com, here are people coming out of jail. We get them a job, we get them a bed, in one of our facilities. We give them transportation, we give them a phone, give them an app, we give them a bank account, coaching, and 85% of those people succeed, whereas 25% of people who don't have that succeed. So that's the business model in general. And these people pay us $307.25 a week out of their $700 paycheck. So that's the business model. Once we decided that and determined that employers are the second chance employers are our customer, then the technology suggested itself. And it was two technology solutions. One, most of these guys, about 75% of people who come out of jail, don't have a bank account. And if you don't have a bank account, you're unbanked and you don't have a way to take a direct deposit paycheck, nor a way to pay your bills. So we gotta create a bank account for them. So we built technology, the first ever felon-friendly bank, with the help of KiwiTech. And that was a very difficult solution to build, and we did it. Second solution is the number one reason that people go back to jail is technical violations. I missed a fine, I missed a date, I didn't call my parole officer on Thursday at 3 p.m. like I was supposed to. And so, or I was somewhere where I wasn't supposed to be. I was within a mile of the person I assaulted, whatever. So we had to build a tracking and a communication app that reminded people to call their parole officer and reminded them that they can't go in these geographies. And so it was a GPS-based communication app. And those two solutions were the technology. But if we had not defined our customer properly, we wouldn't know what solutions to build, and we would have built something completely different. So that, understanding your customer is actually the secret to building effective technology. There are a lot of people who will build technology for technology's sake, or try and grab something that's trendy. For example, we have a partner company who's just gotten themselves into a world of hell by betting on trendy technology. They went into crypto payments, and they had FDIC insured banks as customers, and the banks killed them. The bank said, get rid of that crypto stuff, because we can't do it. So the just technology for technology's sake is a very risky proposition. Knowing your customer and defining the problems that you need to solve with technology according to the customer, that correct customer definition, that is the secret to starting on the technology journey, in my estimation. I've done it the other way around, where you build technology, and that was a solution that nobody wanted. It didn't solve a problem that anybody had. It's really cool and it's really whizzy, but you're an idiot, and therefore you get the death penalty, and you get to die. So that's
Jay. This is going to be.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Go on, Jerry.
Obviously there's a known customer base here, but Adam, I think it would be helpful to talk about when you are much earlier in the process, where as you talked about earlier at the beginning, in your introduction, about defining your client. Now you have to go build that technology to match what you learned. Okay. Talk about how you would, if you don't mind, talk about how you would approach that technology. What do you build? Do you build the full system? Do you build an MVP? How do you define it? What have you experienced there?
Yeah, and I think Jay alluded to this also, but I think the first question that startups rarely ask themselves, but they need to, is should we be building? Right? There's a strong chance that as an early stage entrepreneur, there's a chance you shouldn't be building yet, that you should be continuing to figure out who your customer is, continuing to figure out who their problem is before you're building. And again, I think that goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about the problem space versus the solution space. So when we're talking about building your first technology, make sure the answer to that question is yes, that I should be building. I am ready to be building based on what I know about my client, my future customer, and what I know about their problems. So that's the first thing, right? Is should you be building? If you are ready to build, because you do have a very strong identity for your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and you have a very solid understanding of their problems that you can solve with technology, then great, it's time to build, right? It's time to begin building. But I think the biggest problem that I have seen entrepreneurs go down when that is the case is that they begin to overbuild. To Jay's point earlier, and I love that, I use it all the time, which is if you're not embarrassed by your first product that you release, then you release too late, right? As Jay mentioned earlier, and I completely agree with it. Most entrepreneurs that I have worked with, their biggest problem is that they've overbuilt. They have these delusions of grandeur in their head about what this product can be and all that it can solve. And I know all this about my customer now. I'm going to go solve it. And in order to solve something properly, you need to release in stages. You need to release I'm sure everyone here has heard of MVP, minimum viable product. And while that concept now is pervasive in the industry, I still don't think most entrepreneurs actually utilize it properly. Right?
Great example, Adam. 260 apps on this phone. I use 4.
Yeah, I believe it. And, I think the way to avoid that is generally so simple. It is to build less, right? I always ask the entrepreneurs that I work with, look at your feature set that you are planning to build and tell me what is a must-have versus a nice-to-have. And that simple exercise of just going through and looking at every feature and realizing what's a must-have and what's a nice-to-have. And I think what I've seen in the heads of these entrepreneurs is they know that they need to build this feature eventually, right? Because that's how they'll end up solving the problem to the best of their ability. But it doesn't mean that they need to build it right away. They need to release something quickly because that first product that you're releasing oftentimes is not going to be the product you're going to use to scale and to make money and to build a venture backable business. It's more so to continue to learn what that problem is, right? So if you build something quickly, get it out into the marketplace and can test on it, get the data from it, go talk to the users and what they are enjoying about it, what they're missing from it, what's confusing to them, what problems they're still not solving because of this, then you're going to start to build a product that's going to be way closer to product market fit than if you just try to build the entire solution and then just put it out in the marketplace and see what the reaction is. So I think that's the other thing, Jerry, is don't build too much, right? Build something that, to what Jay and I have said, you're going to be embarrassed about to start, right? And that's, it's hard to think that way, but that's, I think, the best pathway towards success. And, it takes some time, but.
We have a product partner who has a great saying, make them beg for more. So
love it.
Which I like. You're oh man, you did this good thing, but if you just did this other thing, I'd pay more for that. Okay, great. Beg me.
Well, investors do that to you guys. I mean, I've seen investors do that where they say, well, when you get to this point, and you take, let's say, a first-time entrepreneur who's listening to an investor who is showing some interest and say, oh, when you get to this next phase, come back, we're interested. And I think maybe going back to that whole competency scenario and the confidence is, if you take both of your points, and Adam, if you take your point and say, look, I understand what you're saying, but I'm telling you, if I do it this way and I'm committed to it, I'm going to have much more success. And if you invest in me, it's going to be a more successful endeavor than me trying to push to get something that might satisfy an early objective. And oh, by the way, we all know that doesn't mean that they're going to write a check. I mean, and I don't mean to say anything negative. We know that it takes a lot more. So I really appreciate, what you guys are saying. And I think this is, I actually wish that we had 2 hours because I think there's so much more that we can impart to people. I want to leave about 10 minutes for questions and answers. So let me just say that I think, what we all know very well is that it can be lonely to be an entrepreneur. And so entrepreneurs need people. Building a team, or at least having, having others help you with this journey. And so maybe, Adam, you could talk a little bit about how to build a team, in some of the things that we know are very, very important. We can keep this quick so that we can I'd like to leave 10 minutes for questions and answers. Okay, Adam and Jay, that's okay.
Yeah, Jay and I aren't always quick with our answers, but we'll try it this time. Okay. So, the way that
Okay.
The way that I think my generation generally looks at team building is, how can we avoid full-time hires, right? Like for as long as we possibly can, because full-time hires are expensive, they're cumbersome, benefits, all those different reasons why it can be challenging in the beginning to have full-time employees. So, what we generally look for are, or what I have noticed as very successful, are two things. It is gig employees, right? So freelancers, contractors to do the work that you need to be done. There's very little commitment. Oftentimes, the trend right now going that direction, and it's obviously a way that I've gone in my career. Very strong professionals are now gig workers, right? It's not like you're getting the bottom of the barrel who can't get a full-time job. Many people prefer to work in that capacity. So you're still getting really strong talent, pennies on the dollar, and you're only getting it when you need it, right? So you can scale up and scale down with those people, and you can do so very quickly and pivot what you need on a given week or month. So that's the first is gigs, gig workers. And then the second I would say is fractionals. So that's something that I obviously do professionally, is fractional co-founding. So fractional chief product officer is generally my title that I have with some other startups. Even as a core role, like a chief product officer or a head of product, you don't still often need a full-time hire for. You don't need someone's 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You might need that professional, you might need that core competency, but you actually need it 10 hours a week. So consider hiring someone as a fractional, even founder type level role, whether that's a CTO, a CPO, a CFO, but doing it in a fractional capacity so that, one, you can date someone as a founder before you marry them, right? You can actually get some experience with them. And, two, there's just no long-term commitment, and you're not paying as much for that person. So those are the two things, Jerry, is gig and fractional.
Jay, any thoughts on that as well? I know you've got, probably, such an alumni network and other people that have been available to you throughout your journey.
Yeah, it used to be alumni workers, alumni network, and that's when the rotary phone was in place, and there we had Rolodexes with the little cards on our wheel. Then I met Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman founded something called LinkedIn, and I was one of the first 100 users of LinkedIn. Since LinkedIn started, it's been 150 times easier to build teams. And then fractional or gig marketplaces like Fiverr or Upwork, or there are 100 of them, are remarkable marketplaces. But without LinkedIn, none of those would have been possible. And LinkedIn really rules the roost. I mean, I think I have 55,000 connections in my LinkedIn profile. It's just because I've been building them since literally the time that LinkedIn started. But the ability to search and use those tools to find people to fill jobs or gigs, unfreaking believable, and unmatched, and never will be matched, because he started they started the platform. It's a remarkable platform.
Wow. Well, as I said a moment ago, I kind of feel like we could really continue. There's so much more to impart. The journey is remarkable. I always admire founders, their courage, their commitment, and I think that participating in any kind of event that can just help reinforce or confirm, or deny, or modify your thinking, it's always important to continue to learn. So I really appreciate that. Ekant, I wonder if you might have fielded any questions in our last few minutes. Perhaps you can take that. Thank you, everybody, for dealing with my raspy voice today, and I really appreciate it. So let me turn it over to Ekant and see if we can get some questions answered for everyone today.
Sure. Thank you, Jerry, Jay, Adam. That was great. On behalf of all our attendees, we appreciate the valuable insights, the perspectives shared by you today. And for our audience, our panelists are ready to answer your questions. So please feel free to submit them in the Q&A or chat section. In the meantime, I would like to draw your attention to an exciting development. KiwiTech has recently introduced a referral program. The program rewards individuals who make valuable introductions to our company. If you know someone who's seeking tech development support to scale their business, we invite you to join our program. Please follow the steps displayed on the screen or visit our website at kiwitech.com/referral program to learn more. Your contributions to our growth journey are appreciated, and you can also earn incentives for your trust in us. So we'll just give it a minute. Do you have any questions?
Hey, Kant, I've just got a question for you. Are you any relation to Amitabh Bachchan? Because you're like Amitabh, at 28 years old.
I've got a heavy voice. Yeah,
The voice,
I get that a
the
lot.
beard, the whole thing. For those,
Well, no. To answer your question, I am not in any relation with Amitabh, but yeah, I do get that a lot. Probably because of my heavy tone. Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know Amitabh Bachchan, Google it.
He's a superstar. Yeah. Well, India, everybody knows. Do you know Amitabh, Adam? Are you familiar with him?
I can't say that I am. No, I'm not familiar.
I'll
be Googling it with everybody else.
Watch Indian TV for about 20 minutes and like 14 commercials with him on it will show up.
All right.
The guy's a pitchman for he's like Shaquille O'Neal, only India.
Oh, yes.
He's a pitchman for everything.
Yeah.
And he's a great actor.
I think, Jay, we have, as you deem fit, we have a couple of questions from our social media channel, I believe. Okay. So this is generic. I think you have already talked about it. But in the current situation, the current market scenario, in your experience, what makes a compelling value proposition for a startup? And, how can it set a business apart from their competitors? And if you like, you can share an example of a startup that had a unique value proposition, you think? Yeah.
Path to profitability is, probably the sexiest value proposition that you can offer right now in this investment cycle. So if you have a startup that can actually get a path to profitability reasonably soon, that's going to be important. In previous cycles, people say, oh, it was AI, oh, it was crypto, oh, it was this. The sexiest technology doesn't always win the day. A solution that you can offer, maybe you have a unique affinity for, and that has a strong path to profitability, that's going to win the day. So if there's only one phrase you would want to utter to interest investors, it would be path to profitability. And then you would, of course, go down the trust transfer road to establish your credibility, your competency, your track record, and then set up fear of missing out. But it's path to profitability right now. This is, as Adam mentioned, this is a very restrictive, the venture capital is much less available now than it was 14 months ago. Debt is almost not available at all since the failure of Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic Bank, and Signature Bank in New York City. Mortgages are very, very difficult. Mortgage rates went up from 7% to 17% for commercial properties in 5 months. And commercial debt is almost not available at all from banks. You can get some SBA 504 loans, SSBCI loans, some other special situation loans, but it's a very tough road. So therefore, you've got to focus on path to profitability.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that is definitely the trend I'm seeing from our active raise with HandsDown, is that, as I mentioned earlier, the goalposts are definitely moving towards profitability and just revenue generation in general. Pre-revenue companies, I think, are having a very hard time raising right now. If you're not generating at least a little revenue, it's going to be very difficult to raise venture money. So early focus for your value prop should be, how can I make some money, right? Even if it's not profitable yet, how can I make a little bit of money to show that the problem that I'm solving is strong enough that people are willing to pay me for it? And that gets to my second part of value proposition from a product leadership standpoint. What I will always point to is your value proposition needs to be solving your customer's pain point. And that problem needs to be so strong and so acute for your target customer that they are already trying to solve it, right? It's not like they don't know it exists. They need to know it exists, and so much so that they're trying to solve it, but they're failing, or they're doing so incredibly inefficiently or ineffectively. So that would be the other part of value proposition I would think about is what problem am I solving, and how strong of a problem is that actually?
I think we have another question, don't we, Ekant?
Yeah, we have got a couple of in our Q&A. So we have a question from Mark. How do you guys recommend startups manage their finances efficiently to maximize their runway and reduce the need for external capital?
Well, tough question.
Yeah. John D. Rockefeller had a great quote around this. Of course, the richest man prior to Elon Musk, probably the richest man of all time, said, "Wake up early, work hard, and strike oil." And of course, a rich uncle will be a good substitute for that. But in the end, raising money is about transfer of trust, and people need to know that when they give you money, that you can be trusted to spend it well, and if you're going to fail well. But knowing if the question, Ekant, is how do you know when you need money? Once you've decided that you want to scale something beyond just a lifestyle business, you need outside investors. Period. I know there are some success stories out there, people who bootstrap stuff, but guess what? They took 20 years to do it. And most people don't have that kind of patience. Even Elon Musk started his first startup with $12 million that he got as a result of selling his first startup that was started with other people's money. It's, you got to have outside money. You got to have outside money to raise. Now, if anybody wants to reach out, I have a specific methodology for pitching a startup. And if anybody wants to share it, wants me to share it with them, I'd be happy to do that. You can email me at jay@reentrycenters.com.
And I'll just close on this. I know we're basically at time, guys, but from the product perspective, in terms of managing your capital efficiently, I think it's answering those two questions that I mentioned earlier to Jerry's question, which is, should I be building at all right now? Or do I need to still do more research on consumer discovery about what the problem is and who my customer is? And two, once I decide I should be building, avoid overbuilding and try to get something out as quickly as you possibly can and as efficiently as you possibly can. And that's part of what I also focus on with my advisory relationships with KiwiTech portfolio companies and with other startups. So, again, as Jay mentioned, feel free to reach out to me as well if you'd like, any advice from a product perspective and being efficient.
I think one point maybe to emphasize in that very good question about cash management, which is so difficult because there's always surprises. No matter how much you anticipate or try to predict, there's always going to be, surprises in terms of use of capital. And so I think my point would be, even though you may not be, let's say, that accomplished business just yet, don't be afraid to use the right tools. Use an accounting package, get yourself to the point where you're setting yourself up just as you would when the business is more robust and more developed, so that you could watch the cash carefully. And to Jay's point, if you do have investors or partners, you can be completely transparent about it so that when something goes a little bit awry, it's not, oh my God, the earth is, the sky is falling. And would you agree with that, Jay? That I think if you can be more informative because you are yourself informed, then perhaps the management of that capital can be less of a less of a trauma.
Well, it's
more.
true. It's true, Jerry. And you mentioned in my intro that I have completed nearly 100 marathons, and that just goes to high pain threshold, which most entrepreneurs do have to have. You do have to have a high pain threshold. If you read the Elon Musk biography, again, another plug for the book, the Elon Musk biography, that guy has the most outrageously high pain threshold that you can ever imagine. That's the only way he's started all those companies and dealt with all that stress. You don't have to have pain threshold so high that you can raise around 100 marathons or that you can do what Elon Musk does. But you do have to have a pain threshold high enough to deal with transparency and honesty with your investors, and that is as well as your employees and teammates, and even your significant other, your spouses. Very important to be transparent with all of them. Don't hide.
Well,
Great.
Adam, Jay, thank you so much.
Yep, I think we are running a little bit out of time again, but we'll just have one question to our audience. We have it in Q&A. This is from Sahil. So which are the best 3 business inclined towards AI, of course? So 3 business bets in AI, considering an AI expert wants to build a business from their AI expertise. So what do you think about that?
Well,
Oh,
I would argue that even
Go ahead.
well,
Go ahead,
Jay, you
Adam.
go first. Now there's one answer. I better get it right. But
No, there's
the
only
way that I
one
would-
answer. Yeah, there's only
Go.
one answer, and that has to do in AI. There's only one answer, and the answer is anything that helps that facilitates path to profitability or path to payment. That's AI's biggest business use case out there right now, and probably into the future. Path to profitability or path to payments, meaning that in a B2B environment, it'll help companies get closer to a path to profitability. In a B2C environment, or a payment environment, it helps people pay faster. That's the use case. That is the business use case for AI. There's so many others in academics and in science and in research and others, but in business, it's path to payments or path to profitability, and anything that can any AI use that can accelerate those is solid gold.
And the one thing I was going to add to that was, even the way in which that question is phrased is already starting to look at the solution space rather than the problem space. And I would argue, focus on the problem. Regardless of what you want to do with AI, you need to solve a problem that exists. And if you can map your AI solution towards that with your AI expertise, then that would be excellent. If you can marry the two. But first and foremost, start in the problem space. Don't start in the solution space, and then work from there.
Yep, and that's and profits and payments are the 2 biggest problem sets out there. So that's where Adam and I actually agree. Generationally, looking at the same problem through different sides of the telescope. He's looking at the young end, and I'm looking at the old end. You get to guess which one that is.
Great.
We appreciate it. Thanks
for answering the questions, guys. Yeah, we extend our gratitude to you, Jerry, Adam, Jay, and our audience for joining us today. I would like to direct your attention back to the screen to our audience for a glimpse of our upcoming events. We host virtual events on a weekly basis, and we look forward to seeing you at some of our future gatherings. Until then, take care and stay safe. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Go old guys.
Go old guys. Yeah. You're not so old. Adam, be well. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Jerry. You too.